today, if I went out and I asked 10 students, matter of fact, if I polled 50, I say, hey, what do you know about Verizon? They're like, cell phone. But we're so much more than just a cell phone carrier. You can actually grow your career and you can actually enhance certain skill sets just based upon, where your interest may be.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Class is in Session. I'm your host, Ashley Stevens, and this show on Black Enterprise highlights the latest happenings inside HBCU classrooms. We shine a light on public policy issues facing these historic institutions, and we also take a look at the overall state of Black higher education. We also highlight leaders, students, and alum from HBCUs who are making major impact in business, education, and the arts. And I'm super excited that today we have a leader of power with us. As an HBCU alum and military veteran, Kwame Trotman, MBA, is not new to leadership at all. He's led many teams across his 20-plus years at Verizon, ensuring more than 22,000 employees daily deliver best-in-class customer experience for Verizon's consumer and business customers. As the company celebrates 25 years, Kwame has been making power moves with Verizon for the majority of the company's existence, helping to power the people and processes responsible for a broad range of services used by millions each day. So today we'll discuss how his prestigious HBCU, Hampton University, prepared him for various leadership roles and what's on the horizon for Verizon. Hello and welcome, Kwame.
Hello, Ashley. I'm sorry. I had to take a beat. That was such an amazing introduction. Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. You didn't know that I was a rapper. I don't believe that you knew that what was on the horizon for Verizon won a Grammy.
Got my vote.
Well, it's awesome to have you here. Listen, I know that Verizon is celebrating 25 years. Is that right, of being in business?
That is correct. So I've actually had the good fortune of being here for its entirety because Verizon, it was started in 2000, but I actually started with a predecessor company, which is Bell Atlantic. So I've definitely been here from its inception all the way to where we are now.
Wow. We're definitely going to get into some of the changes you've seen just in the technology landscape, across that time and how you've been able to ascend in leadership across, all these years as well. But let's just, go back just a little bit just to tell us, where are you from and when did you first gain an interest in telecommunications?
Outstanding question. Kind of just going with the theme about rapping. I'm from Hollis, Queens. I grew up I grew up in New York City, so great humble beginnings. So me, like many, growing up, I had an ambition to work in business in some respect, not knowing exactly which avenue I would actually pursue. However, my uncle, believe it or not, he actually worked for New York Telephone, and him, within his influence, he, when I was in college. He said, look, maybe that's a career field that you should explore. Because I actually went to school for, investment banking, believe it or not. So I wanted to be on Wall Street. So I did everything I needed to do in order to attain a business degree that would position me to kind of going down the path of Wall Street. But, I saw some of my classmates at the time who got early recruited. They suffer from burnout in Wall Street. So I said, you know what, I better pivot into a different direction. So I took my uncle's advice, and that's really what ended me in the telecommunications space. So pretty excited, and I don't regret that decision, not one bit.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I was actually going to ask, did you have any regrets about not trying Wall Street and going straight into the business world?
No, not at all. I think what I learned about myself is that I'm not equipped to really deal with the hustle and bustle of Wall Street. I can do trading on my own.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of training, we know that you also have a military background.
I
Thank you
do.
for your service.
Thank you.
So, which branch of the military did you serve in, and how did that experience carry over to what you do today with Verizon?
Absolutely. So I served in the United States Marine Corps honorably for 8 years. It was a combination of active duty along with reserves within with the reserve duty. I think that for me, what kind of landed me in the decision to select the military and specifically the Marine Corps is I remember, I'm going to share a little bit of insight. I remember being on Church Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, And a recruiter had actually stopped me while I was walking and said, "Look, hey, have you given some thought around maybe pursuing a life in the military?" And at that particular point in time, I really didn't. But what he actually did during that engagement, what he pursued is he said, "Look, it's always good to have options in life." And I think at that particular point in time, I said, "Hey, that's definitely a great option to have within your repertoire, because whichever path that you decide to go down, you can always pivot back to the military." So for me, I was able to attain certain life skill sets, as well as set a foundation that put me in a path where hard work and having the right work ethic allowed for me to then apply those same type of methodology into the corporate sector. So it helped me as far as being to be fully prepared to then go through college, and then from there, I was able to then pivot into Verizon. So that's something where you never realize the importance of it until years later. So I
Hmm.
find myself talking about my time in the military probably more often now than I would have had, decades ago when I actually went into the military.
Got it. Glad to hear that was a helpful preparation ground, so to speak, for what you didn't even know was to come in terms of a long career with leadership and service at Verizon. Shout out to the recruiter on Church Avenue. I lived in East Flatbush, not far from Church Avenue off of Linden.
That's
So
right.
glad to know that Brooklyn was looking out. Or was it Church Avenue in the Brooklyn stretch
No,
of Church?
it's in the Brooklyn side. Yep, yep, yep. Brooklyn stand up.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Well, listen, you obviously honorably served in the military and you attended a prestigious HBCU.
I did.
Why did you choose an HBCU and why specifically Hampton University?
Ashley, it all comes down to different world. I mean, I think a different world inspired many of us. All right, my favorite TV show. I was inspired to kind of see young professionals and young students who look like me. It opened up doors of opportunity, and really, it was only two options as far as I consider, Hampton or Howard. And Hampton at the time, just I actually took a visit. I fell in love with it instantaneously, and then it was no question as far as where I wanted to really pursue my scholastic career.
That's awesome. What was your degree in?
Yeah, so I have a business finance degree.
Business finance. Got it. And obviously you lead business operations today.
Yep,
Let's talk a little bit about your career with Verizon. And I actually wanted to mention as well, we had the incredible opportunity here at Classes in Session to interview the amazing Charnel Brown, Miss Charnel Brown, who played Kimberly Reese on A Different
that's
World
right.
last year. We talked, and she mentioned that she was still even surprised at the impact the show has had this many years later. So shout out to all of the cast, crew, writers, producers of A Different World because the impact was really seen, felt then and now. So
Absolutely.
that's incredible to hear that that was a big catalyst for you choosing an HBCU. How did your HBCU, degree and experience help you in the business world at Verizon?
Yeah. So a couple things. First and foremost, I just wanted to just make a shout out here. So the household, our household is an HBCU household. So I went to Hampton. My wife went to Howard. Our son attends Morehouse today. So very, very proud about this the foundation that's actually been established.
Love it.
Now, as far as preparing and equipping, I had no idea, as far as what you actually learn within that environment and how it would be utilized and leveraged within the corporate sector. Because, coming up in business, what I did learn was adaptability. What I also learned about is confidence. And these are all skill sets that, quite honestly, didn't exactly know how much they were learned and how much I actually was embedded in just who I became as a young leader into the workforce. There was this gentleman who actually I'll never forget his name. His name used to be Dr. Bellinger, and he was a former Ford executive. And it's what's important specifically around professionals who are now able to take some of their learnings and then go back and especially specifically into the HBCU environment and kind of share, kind of like what I consider to be navigation tools. And for him, he was so influential because he had an illustrious career and he was able to really share knowledge around, hey, this is exactly how you want to show up. He actually instills certain key principles, something very minute as far as just being on time, making sure that what you present, as far as who you are, people will make the first judgment just based on who they know when they first see you, and you want to make sure that whatever biases they may have had, you want to remove that instantaneously. And that's one of the kind of key learnings that I was able to really adapt and really equip myself. So I I specifically think, coupled with what I learned in the military, it really allowed for me to now consider to be someone who the company and maybe even some of my peers to say, okay, wait a minute, this guy got something. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that in itself, really was foundational setting. So, one of my passions is that I have a commitment as well as an obligation that, when I'm done here at Verizon, I want to go back to an HBCU and kind of share those same sentiments.
That's exciting. Listen, we'll have to keep in touch so that when
Yeah.
you do go back, we're highlighting what you do with HBCU students. And kudos to you having a HBCU family
Oh yeah.
in its entirety. That's pretty powerful. That's really awesome to hear. And about the values instilled, about how you present yourself, the confidence that's needed, because all of that is translated successfully into everything you've done at Verizon. So take us through the different roles you've had
Oh, wow.
since Verizon's inception. Tell us kind of where you started
Yeah.
and what your role was leading up to what your day-to-day role is now as a senior vice president.
Sure. Okay, it's been quite of a journey, because the reason why I take so much pride in it, is because I started as entry level. So I started in, believe it or not, climbing telephone poles. From the most, and which what was good about that is that I learned about the business from what I consider to be the most beginning understanding phase around telecommunications, and it's understanding as far as being, and when you move up in your career, it's always important for you to understand exactly, what is it that you are asking your teams to do, and for you being able to garner that level of credibility. That's where I think I would. There's no other place I would have started. So started at entry level. Had an opportunity then to move up into leadership roles. I led teams in Washington D.C., where I sit today, and I also led teams in. I'm gonna go through some various states here. So I worked in the operations world. I worked in the engineering world. My career took me to take on assignments where I led large business enterprises, where I had half my team in EMEA, which was in Europe as well as in Asia. So I had an international assignment for a stint as well. Then I actually pivoted to working in headquarters. So worked on some big organizations as far as like corporate strategy, and then I took my career in a whole different direction, where I actually led wireless customer care centers for a few years. And then once I did that role, I actually ran a region. So I ran the southeastern region, which was based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I was responsible for delivering $14 billion of revenue to the business. And from there, I transitioned back to the operations space of where I sit today. I ran our staff teams. Then I became the region vice president in Washington D.C. area. Then from there, I pivoted into a senior vice president role. So I gave you a very abridged version, only because I probably had maybe 14 to 15 different jobs here. But each one of those jobs has given me, not only just different various experiences, but also what's most important is that I moved physically 10 times for the business. So I've lived in New York, I've lived in New Jersey, I've lived in Virginia, I've lived in Nashville, Tennessee, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, I lived in Adrian, Michigan, I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I lived in South Bend, Indiana, I lived in Tampa, Florida. So the level of flexibility and the support that I have at home allowed for me to really learn the business from many, many different ways. There's a certain level of adaptability as understanding your customer base. And I consider myself somewhat of a chameleon because you can put me anywhere, whether it's rural, whether it's urban, ultra urban. I think there's a way as far as how do you connect with people and being able to lead, many different various teams.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. We're here with Kwame Trotman with Verizon. He spent his entire career with the company, which is celebrating 25 years this year, 14 or 15 positions in that time. That's remarkable. And, I'm just curious. I started as a print journalist. I mean, the kids today probably don't know what a newspaper is.
Right.
But, this was when you had to go out and report and write. There was no social media to
Hmm.
tell you what was going on or to gather information. So I'm so curious to know from you. Tell us about the evolution that you've seen in the digital or telecommunication space over the years? And like, is there anything now that you see in terms of like where we are with connection
Sure.
that completely blows your mind from when you started 25 years ago?
Absolutely. So there's so many different proof points that goes into, where technology has kind of just risen over the course of the past couple decades. I'll share with you, and I'm going to date myself because yes, when I first started in this business, we had dial-up. Dial-up was, you go like you heard ding, ding, ding. And at that particular point in time, that was our version of high speed internet. Where 1.5 meg was I mean, that was blazing speed. Now when you fast forward and you kind of think about what our children and really the generations that what we actually get to experience today, they have really literally been raised in a technology driven world. I mean, things that we take for granted that they probably just like, hey, well, I don't know any other reason, any other way. I didn't get a cell phone until I graduated college. My first
Mhm.
cell phone I can remember was in 1999. Now, kids today at age 8, yeah, they're getting their first iPhone, and maybe some even, probably younger than that. The mere fact that when we first rolled out our video services for our file services, primarily in the Northeast, it was all about who can provide the most HD channels. Today, it's all about, hey, how much content can you actually get at accessible on your phone? The
Mhm.
mere fact that we are never locked into one specific place, we're a mobility driven world. Everything that you want to be able to experience from an entertainment perspective, you get it from your phone. You have
Yeah.
little mini computers that provide you real time updates. The years of where you have to wait sometimes to hear anything about a family member just because you were at work and there's no way for you to get in contact with them. Today, you can find out within seconds and minutes. And the other piece of it too is that we become extremely impatient. Think about it. Would you rather go to Netflix and be able to binge watch 10 episodes of one your favorite TV show, or would you rather having to watch a show that on regular linear TV where a new episode comes on every week? Again, I think that we would rather say, hey, you know what? I'd rather just sit down and enjoy my viewership just by being able to can watch everything all in one sitting. This is just it's just a byproduct of where we are, where we're going. And then artificial intelligence. So AI now is a big catalyst because big data is now being summarized within your fingertips. You can
Yeah.
ask a question for anything any life event, any problem that you may have. Now we just got to make sure that we're responsible users and making sure that information is being used in the capacity in the way where it's going to be utilized and leveraged accordingly. So even with I talked to my son and he's some of the teachers. It's like, look, this has to be done old school way. No AI allowed. So again, I'm amazed to see exactly where the technology has really kind of just immersed ourselves into our everyday lives. People always talk about, hey, what's the true, I would say, competitive threat? It's technology, but you have to embrace it. You can look at it as a threat, or you can look at it as say, hey, this is going to be a great supplemental tool to enhance my skill sets and enhance my knowledge as far as how do I do my job with a lot more efficiently.
That's a unique way to think about it, is that you can see it as a threat or as an opportunity. And I think that, what a way to think about things, especially as you mentioned, the younger generation, you talk about children, teens, they know nothing but the digital world and the digital experience being completely at their fingertips. Like you said, you and I, 99 was it. Once I got my cell phone, I've been locked into that same number
That was
and
crazy.
the same contacts and people being able to reach out, and then obviously being able to expand beyond that to have, social, movies, TV shows, ordering food, ordering groceries, all these things at your fingertips.
Yep.
How is Verizon just corporately as a company able to stay on top of the latest changes and trends in the industry?
Yeah. So look, there's a lot of industry analysis that has to take place on a global world, on a global path. So we're steadily just identifying, hey, what are value to customers? So just imagine, I mean, we have a really robust research development teams that is just, and And the reason why it's so important, for us to kind of stay ahead of the curve as far as some of the decisions that we make as far as building out the network and really engaging some of those capabilities is that we're in a very, very competitive climate. Our competitors, they are moving just as quickly. And as always the race, we're in the race for information. And so I think, one of the things that to me is one of our strongest assets is our ability to not only leverage the knowledge internally with with our internal teams, but then also being able to make the right connected tissue from what's important to customers. And hence the reason why you can just, think about your cell phone buying experience. Oftentimes it may change over on a quarter basis because there's going to be certain things that we pulse in as far as what is important to customers. It could be, a connected device as far as the form of an iPad, just based on, where is the right season for education. It could be, gizmo watches because now we are, research has told us that there's a X amount of new users that's going to be entering this market just based on when babies were born. And so we want to make sure that, hey, we want to take full advantage of getting them into our entry level connected device, and then obviously then transition into a phone later on. It's wild when you think about all the different things that we have to be thinking about as far as some that really kind of really um, accompany some of the decisions that we're making. Not to mention the fact that today we have a lot of users, depending on if you live in a city or urban environment. If you live in rural areas, you you can still get what we consider to be city amenities as far as connectivity. And that used to be where it's like, oh, if you want to get high speed internet, you need to move to the city somewhere. Now we're like, hey, we got to make sure that we can actually bring that to you. And that's one of the things that is probably one of the advancements that I'm probably most excited about, because you can be where your next neighbor is a mile away. It doesn't matter. We want to make sure the same experiences that you have, you could be right in the middle of New York City and or be somewhere in Iowa on a farm. We have an obligation to go ahead and provide you that same type of product. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool, and it's also very pertinent to tying into other systems just for the health of the community. Education, a lot of schools and including some HBCUs
That's
had
right.
had partnerships where folks have come in to make sure that broadband, everything was up to speed just for learning purposes,
Hmm.
but also health. Think about someone who's in a remote area,
That's
and
right.
telehealth may be the most viable option for people. Let's say they're way out or may have a mobility issue. The work you all and your team, that you're doing really is important to help folks stay connected for just to be their healthiest selves. When you think about it in that regard.
For sure, for sure. And one of the things I will tell you is one of the tenets of Verizon is that we're great corporate citizens. I have been really, I'm just excited about the opportunities that I actually had early on in my career. So in 2014, through our Verizon Foundation, we partnered with about 10 HBCUs, and we were able to provide what we consider to be the Innovative Learning Academy. And what it did is that we identified students at the middle school level, specifically around STEM, because we recognize that when we look at the future state, science, technology, engineering, and math, we under index, specifically within the young male community. So we have, first of all, big shout out to our women out there because they are doing it. You hear me? So, our young professional women are, definitely over indexing, specifically in the engineering and STEM fields. Well, our young men, we recognize that we had to touch them early on. And so we exposed them for like 2 week, these programs where they actually concentrated on coding. They actually concentrated on robotics, give them a little bit excitement and saying, hey, this is the path that you may want to pursue. Although it may seem hard and difficult, the end result is going to definitely be beneficial. So Hampton happened to be one of the colleges that we actually did this partnership with, and this has been something that's been a long stay because we're very very intuitive around the digital divide that exists specifically within the minority community. So this is one of the things that you always ask yourself is like, hey, what's the fulfillment that you actually get from your job? It's just knowing that, hey, not only are we for a for-profit business, but we're also make sure that we understand the responsibility that comes with corporate citizenship.
Got it. No, you're right. Bridging the digital divide is a really big deal, and kudos to you all for helping to address that. And as you mentioned, partnerships with 10 HBCUs. I know that's super exciting. And, one way to think about getting more young males of color and Black men in this space is obviously when they're recruited for internships and jobs, is having a safe space while they're at work. And
Yep.
I'd love for you to tell us, Kwame, about, support Verizon offers in terms of employee resource groups.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I actually am a chair of our Bold organization, which is a employee resource groups of that Black originators, leaders, and doers. We've actually been some of our legacy company, a legacy. Uh, the name, I'm sorry, it predates this where it goes back 40 years. Last year we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Black Employee Resource Group here within Verizon and its predecessor companies. And I actually lead. I'm actually on the advisory board, and that's something where it's a sense of pride because for many students, we're in a state now where as we're going out and we're recruiting, we have to make sure that we're as attractive for students to choose us just as selective as we want to choose them. And one of the things that is important is that you want to make sure you have some level of assimilation to say, hey, am I going to be set up for success? And and this is just an example, is that as we're recruiting specifically minorities out of college, we're going to make sure we open up the aperture and say, hey, this is how you're going to be supported. This is the roadmap that allows to make sure that you have a network of leaders that is going to set you up for success. And that's one of the things that we highly, concentrate on. We concentrate on, resume building, but we also, concentrate on interview skills. It's all about branching into your network. We have probably is about almost 9,000 members today. 9,000
Wow.
members. 9,000 members. And no, you don't have to always be a person of African American descent to be part of the organization. It's open and it's very inclusive, and we encourage all employees to be part of it. And Verizon has definitely shown the power of once we've actually opened that door, we've been able to leverage all of the great assets that comes along with it. So pretty exciting.
That's incredibly exciting. 9,000 members is a really big deal.
Yep.
And you actually touched on some of this. I was, wanting our audience to know a little bit more on the importance for young professionals in
hmm
particular, particularly young professionals of color, to have a safe space in such a massive corporate environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the thing is that what to me separates Verizon and probably from many different companies is that we've had to pivot and we've had to change and we've also have to acclimate to what's happening in the world real time. As we all recall, COVID was a big change for society and as a whole. And we were able to implement and then also adopt some new ways of working. We recognize that, hey, does that mean that we have to implement a hybrid type of schedule for our new teammates that's want to enter the world? Guess what? A lot of our new leaders coming into the world, they want the flexibility of being able to work from home as well as coming into an office. And we can be bullish and saying that nope, these are our corporate values, they're not going to change. And we recognize that no, we can't do that. We have to be able to change based upon what the dynamics and what the demand is. And that's one of the things that, consider we continue to be grounded and we continue to do our necessary research, making sure that we not only get the best of the best, but then when they do come here, they show up and be the best. So that's one of the things that, I'm definitely proud of. And I love the fact that we're not so close minded. And I have a responsibility as a leader to create that and foster an environment where I can get open dialogue and feedback from my teammates. And then, you know what, I take that information and say, look, you know what, that's a great idea. That's something that we can trial. We can definitely see if it's scalable. And if it is, hey, we're on the right path. So, that's if anyone asks me and it says, hey, what's one of the benefits of you being in the role that you're in? It's my ability to listen, to hear, and then to put things in action. So pretty cool.
Got it. Well, you're certainly doing that. I mean, I think that it's noble that you mentioned Verizon is open minded to adapt and adjust to the corporate culture and setting because you're right. There are a lot of young people that may say, I mean, they literally look at opportunities and decide where they will or won't work
Right.
based on not just the corporate climate, but whether they have remote or hybrid opportunities, different things. That the fact that you all have been flexible about that is very encouraging. And I'm interested to know for students that and young professionals included who are interested in entering
Mhm.
the telecommunications or the digital or even the business operations field today, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers to young people coming into the spaces? If there are any barriers, maybe there's more than enough candidates for all of the, positions that are out there, but if there
Yep.
are barriers, what are some of those?
Well, I think we have a responsibility to removing some of those barriers. So, because of the fact that we practice very equal employment practices, oftentimes some of our internships is on a first come first serve basis. So we have to make sure that we're fostering and building relationships with a lot of different institutions that allows for students that actually reside in those schools to get the first opportunity to say, hey, this is when we're going to have these internships available. It's now it's bestows onto them to making sure that they look out and they actually apply within a very immediate time frame. Because often what we see is that we're constantly missing those opportunities. So when we do get students specifically from HBCUs to apply for certain open roles, whether it may be full time or even internships, it's just where they fall into the sequence of applicants. So we want to make sure that we can kind of change some of that and just making sure that we have appropriate notification time ahead. The other thing too, where I do believe there's an opportunity is we have to now change the public perception around what Verizon is. So today, if I went out and I asked 10 students, matter of fact, if I polled 50, I say, hey, what do you know about Verizon? They're like, cell phone. But we're so much more than just a cell phone carrier. We have legal departments, we have finance departments, we have communication departments, we have engineering departments. We have it's a gamut of talent and so many different paths that you can actually learn. So I don't think it's segmented into just saying, okay, well, I'm just going to everything I do is just going to be servicing phones. That's not the case at all. So you can actually grow your career and you can actually enhance certain skill sets just based upon where your interest may be. I oftentimes, if I'm looking for students, I'm looking for students with broad and backgrounds. I'm looking for psychology majors because you know what? That means you have the art of being able to collaborate with people. I'm looking for social sciences. There's a different art as far as, how you be able to gather information from many different society of walks of life. Of course, I love to get anyone from a technology driven world because, with AI and some of the technology enhancements, I want to be able to have someone that is able to now put a lot of those network enhancements into place. But I also need to make sure I have people who can actually help me with user stories. And oftentimes, people who work on the development side, they don't necessarily know exactly, hey, what's important to people. And so hence the reason why we got to make sure that we got all these different talents and we can put them all together and really provide what I consider to be a very, very, very strong finished product at the end. So that's the piece of it where we just have a responsibility of changing the nomenclature of what Verizon is. Slowly but surely, I think that people see certain commercials on TV, and as well as as we continue to get out in the community and we talk a little bit more about it, I think we'll definitely close that gap of understanding.
Got it. I'm so glad that you shared this, Kwame, because I certainly was wanting anyone watching, particularly HBCU students who are interested in careers and internships at Verizon, to know about the types of majors. And you shared a range of them, from not just the computer science and technology side, but psychiatry, social sciences, business. That there's a range of things that students could have an interest in. Political science, pre-law, that type thing. That there's a range of interest areas that they could have to look for career opportunities. Kwame, I should have asked at the very beginning,
Yeah.
but as we wrap, I really want to know a little bit more about. Tell us just what's a day in the life for you. What do you do day
Wow.
to day as senior vice president of center and business operations at Verizon? And
Wow.
and and also, what do you find most rewarding about what you do every day?
Wow. So I think that can be easily summarized is that I get an opportunity to lead an amazing team of people. I know it sounds pretty cliche, but trust me, when you have the years of experiences I have, and you realize that, hey, what's fulfillment looks like, it's your ability to work collaboratively with amazing people that put together what I consider to be great, productive plans as far as our ability to respond to customer needs, our plans to respond to shareholder equity, as well as identifying what we are committed to as far as society at whole. So to give you kind of a high level degree, because really do not want to take you down a path of just like of, of you like, oh, what is this? So my organization, we support around, you had mentioned earlier, about 22,000 team strong. And we're responsible for making sure that we're delivering high bandwidth services to customers, specifically our Fios services. We're also building out the network that supports our mobility network. We also are in charge of some of our large enterprise customers. We build out the backbone within that space, but we're also um, responsible for ensuring that as we build the networks, we're closely aligned with our point of sale teams and making sure that we have a good go to market strategy. And within everything else, service excellence is exactly what our mantra is, because we recognize that in a competitive space today, as consumers have choices, and they have choices of saying, hey, I don't have to do business with Verizon. I don't have a loyalty towards Verizon. But what I hopefully will build is that, what we've seen is that we're reliable, and then we're also powered by people with the highest, utmost integrity. And when you make a decision to do business with Verizon, it's the people behind the V that is the reason why you stay with us. So that's uh, that's what I get to do every single day. So I didn't really want to go down the path of anything as far as just the widgets that we do every single day, but it's more or less just the strategy around it, that I probably value the most.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I know you do a lot of important work, and leading a team of 22,000 alone sounds daunting, but clearly with, all the experience you've had under your belt, I'm sure you were up for the task. I'm sure you're up for the task. Kwame, as we think about Verizon celebrating 25 years, and I mean, our minds probably can't always conceive like what's next. Obviously, AI is huge.
Yep.
Like you said, when we first got our cell phones and they were flip phones, we didn't think that there could be smart technology in our
Right.
hands. So, what's next as we think about just the industry as a whole, telecom, digital space, but also for the company? What is on the horizon for Verizon?
Well, I think what it is that customers require and demand more bandwidth. So as we continue to think about applications that goes on top of what bandwidth we can provide, I think it's limitless. And this is where, customers will dictate exactly what's next. When you think about if they decide to, prime example, if all of a sudden now the WNBA goes from go from like 12 teams to 50 teams, there's going to be more viewership, on your devices. The mere fact that in the NFL, they're now secured a deal where they can do 4 games in Brazil. It just gives you an idea that the global market in itself is going to dictate exactly what's next. But we have a commitment to making sure that we can invest in our networks and provide options for customers, and provide options for developers, but then also some of our partnerships, because we actually put a lot of time and energy around different partnerships with other different companies such as like Hulu and Disney and things of that nature. So um, one can only tell what's on the horizon. But for right now, we're just building out the network. So that's where we are.
That's it, building out the networks. Kwame Trotman, thank you so much for being here
Thank you for
at
having me.
Classes in Session.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. And again, to those who are watching, be sure to share this episode with family and friends, particularly the HBCU students in your life who are looking for careers, internship opportunities. Know that it's not limited to only computer science, computer engineering, but there's a broad range of business, legal, human resources opportunities, communications, because Verizon is such a global company. And we're excited to have had Senior Vice President of Center and Business Operations, Kwame Trotman, here with us today at Classes in Session. Be sure to stay posted for the latest and greatest on Black Enterprise's social media channels and also on our website at blackenterprise.com. For this episode of Class is in Session, I'm your host, Ashley Stevens, and class is dismissed. For more than 5 decades, we've had your back. Class is in session, and Black Enterprise have everything you need to elevate your excellence.